Euphorbia millie, and I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, is actually a very dangerous plant that I don't know if a lot of people have heard about. Plant, if touched with the bare hands, can cause all kinds of skin rashes, irritations, can cause swelling, and can cause terrible blisterings just on the skin alone if you don't use gloves when you handle it. And to make things even worse, it actually has this milky sap to it that if it gets into your eyes, it can cause temporary blindness. You have a really strong sensitivity to light, and it's just really painful, obviously, being on the skin and in the eyes. And unfortunately, if this same plant is ingested in any way, it can cause nausea, vomiting, and even lead to bloody diarrhea, which is not a pretty sight at all. Euphorbia millie is also known as the crown of thorns. Now, this message goes into the power of the dog, and it's found in Psalms 22, verses 16, and I believe it's also found in verse 20 as well. It says, "My darling, from the power of the dog." And that led me into this deep dive on the crucifixion of Jesus. And if you haven't seen the other videos, I challenge you to watch those first before you watch this one. This is the third installment, or the third part of that series. We're going to start in Mark 15, verses 17 through 20. "And they clothed him with purple and plaited a crown of thorns and put it upon his head, and began to salute him, 'Hail, King of the Jews!' They smote him on the head with the reed, and they spit on him, bowing their knees, and worshipped him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple from him, and they put his own clothes on him, and led him off to be crucified." Now we'll go into Luke 23, starting in verse 44. "And it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour." So from about 12 o'clock in the afternoon till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there was complete darkness over this area. Verse 45, "And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst." And that's speaking of right as Jesus' death, around the 3 o'clock period, there was a massive earthquake, which we can read in Matthew 27, where it speaks of the earthquake, and the saints from the Old Testament, the prophets from old, were released from their graves and came out through the city, ministering unto the people. But here we see, and it's mentioned throughout the other Gospels as well, that there was a 3-hour period of darkness. And now my question to you today is, could it be that the reason why God allowed there to be a 3-hour period of darkness was because Jesus was now sensitive to light? Because of the endurance of the pain from the plant that was not just gently placed on his head, but crammed onto his head, and the blood that was pouring from his face, from the thorns and the sap that was probably getting into his eyes, and the fact that it was probably getting into his mouth, making him nauseous, making him sick, and causing other pain. Now, guys, I'm not trying to paint a pretty picture here, because this is not a pretty sight. However, Jesus, we are told, is the light of the world. And so I find these things interesting. Now, if we go over to Isaiah chapter 9, starting in verse 1, it says this, "Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as it was in her vexation, when at first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan in Galilee of the nations. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land, the shadow of death, upon them hath the light shined. Now this is prophetic because it's Isaiah, and Isaiah is speaking of a great light. Now then, Luke chapter 4, verses 14 and 15, it states this, "And Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit into Galilee, and there went about a fame of him throughout all the regions round about. He taught in their synagogues, being glorified of all." This is that prophecy being fulfilled of Isaiah. We see that Jesus is, in fact, the light. Matthew 4:12 through 17. "Now when Jesus heard that John was cast into prison, he departed into Galilee, and leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is upon the sea of the sea coast, in the borders of Zebulun and Naphtali." I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. "That it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, The land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea beyond Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people which sat in darkness saw great light. To them which sat in the region and the shadow of death, light is sprung up." From that time Jesus began to preach and say, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." So again, we see this prophecy being fulfilled. Jesus is the light. Now John chapter 3, verses 18 through 21. "And he that believes on him is not condemned, but he that believe not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the condemnation, that light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For every one that doeth evil hates the light, neither cometh to light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth come to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God." And then, of course, John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. "In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and darkness comprehended it not." Verse 9 through 11. "That was the true light, which lighteth every man that comes into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not." Now we have Genesis chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. This is the first day. "And God said, Let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from darkness, and God called the light day, and darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day." But now we go down to verses 14 through 19 of that same chapter, and we notice something else. "And God said," on the fourth day this was mentioned, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day, and to rule over the night, and to divide the light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day." So here we already have the light, or a light, on the first day. Yet the sun shows up here on the fourth day, verses 14 through 19. I find that interesting. Here's the connection, and this was thanks to my brother Marty. If you look at the Hebrew calendar, just Google it and see what year it says we're in. It will tell you that we're getting very close to the 6,000 year mark, which means we have another 1,000 years to reign on earth with the Lord, the millennial reign. I wonder several things, but this one in particular is, was it in fact that the light that's from the sun on earth was dimmed because the light of the earth, the light of life, was fading out? We see here in Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 through 19, that's when the sun was given to us. Which, if you look at this in a different way, that's the 4,000 year mark, which is when Jesus came to the earth. I just find that interesting.